Welcome to Safety Talk. Personal safety expert Pete Canavan shares his insights and interviews experts who provide simple and effective tips, techniques, and technologies to keep you safe and secure both online and off. Here's Pete.
Hello, and welcome to Safety Talk. On this show, we discuss and bring attention to a wide range of safety and security products and solutions that are available to both businesses and individuals in the digital world and the physical world. I am your host and personal safety expert, Pete Canavan. As a self-employed information technology consultant since 1995 and as a martial artist for over 25 years, I bring decades of both online and offline experience in the safety and security arena to this show as my role as the host. You can always learn more about me at my personal website, petecanavan.com. Don't forget, subscribe to the podcast and help and our YouTube channel at safetytalkvideos.com / to the YouTube channel. We appreciate, of course, you guys helping us spread the word about Safety Talk, about our great guests and the products and solutions that they provide to keep all of us safer and more secure in what is an increasingly dangerous world. So thanks to all our listeners for being here. It's been a wild last few months. I've actually taken a little bit of a brief hiatus from the show for a few months as I've watched kind of in horror and disbelief and absorbing and dealing with and pondering how the United States and the rest of the world has been dealing with the COVID crisis and how the world is really changing very, very rapidly around us and unfortunately more negatively than I had ever even thought possible. So I do try to keep politics off the show, but I must comment and reflect on the state of the United States right now because it really directly affects the safety and security of our citizens, of our country. And, that's what this show, Safety Talk, is all about. It's about your safety. It's about your security. And both are being threatened in a very real way right now. There is a crisis, and it definitely is most definitely a crisis at the southern border of the United States right now. And it's going to continue to have a direct impact on your safety and your security in the future. Letting in tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants and undocumented people is, without vetting them, without testing them, without knowing who they are, is insane. It's an insane policy of this Biden administration, and it's going to change things in this country forever and not in a good way. I heard something the other day that at current levels, we will be letting in the equivalent of the population of the entire city of Chicago each year into this country. That's not good policy. That's way too many people. We just can't sustain it. So it's kind of a perfect segue into my introduction of tonight's guest. Like me, he is also a martial artist. He's someone who is trained to protect others and protect themselves from criminals and evildoers. And they are out there. He is the chief contributor to the Security Advisor blog, securityadvisor.net. It's a blog that focuses on personal security issues, situational awareness, self-defense, community and home security, which is really a very appropriate topic for our show today. He entered into the security industry way back in 2000, over 20 years ago. His focus has been on residential security, providing risk assessments and training to communities and also to security officers. So I couldn't think of a better topic or a better guest than who we have on today. He's currently pursuing his goal of making this world a safer place, one life at a time. In addition to his martial arts training, that started way back at the ripe old age of 9, he also has experience in firearms, security management, and trauma counseling. This gentleman has also worked as a tactical officer and trainer and manager. So I think you will all agree he's a perfect guest for these troubling times. And so it is my pleasure to welcome Jason Mordecai from Johannesburg to Safety Talk. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Well, I know it's very early where you are. I appreciate you getting up early.
I'm an early bird, and I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, from South Africa. So we have had guests from other parts of the world. This is the first one from Johannesburg. So, all right, you're the first there.
Right.
Now,
glad to be.
Sure. Now, as you heard there, sort of my opening monologue, that there are a lot of concerns that Americans and people all over the world, for that matter, have with regard to their personal safety. And as I was preparing for this show yesterday, I received the troubling news about the supermarket massacre that took place in Boulder, Colorado yesterday. it was definitely a massacre. I mean, I don't say active shooter or mass shooting because, I mean, the heck with those politically correct terms. It was absolutely a massacre. Somebody goes in there and does that. And just now I was watching on the news that actually of the 10 people that were killed, the first, of course, was the first officer that arrived on scene. Unfortunately, it was a relatively young man, 51-year-old Officer Eric Talley. He was a veteran of that force. But 7 out of the 10 that were killed were children. And that I only just found out literally about half an hour before starting coming on the show tonight. And that pains me even more, being the father of 3. And every parent out there, your heart breaks for these people and their families. I hadn't really planned to start our interview off today, Jason, about this, but it's so relevant, it's so recent. I just had to do that, and so I just want to kind of get your immediate thoughts to that.
Well, look, I hadn't heard the news that 7 kids were involved, and also, again, as a father and from all South Africans, I've got to send my condolences out across the Atlantic to everyone on that side, because that is just mind-blowing news. I can relate to when I first heard the news. I relate to that in terms of my life, because every day I'm responsible for putting young men out on the street. They put their body armor on, they take their firearm, and at the end of the day, I deploy them and I put them in harm's way. And when I heard about that officer, I thought about my guys. Often they're working on their own as well. They're responding to alarms. They're responding to calls from the public. And, I always say to the guys, most of the calls you're going to go to are going to be false alarms, but there's going to be that one. And I thought about that officer, and in my career, I've buried 6 officers, and I know how hard for the leaders of that police team. I know just how hard that is and how absolutely devastating that can be. I'm also I'm a little bit puzzled and fascinated. I've been following, and I think the word massacre is a much better word. I've been following this phenomena for years. It's not something that we have in South Africa. So yes, we are a very, very violent society. We have average of 52 murders a day in South Africa. Home invasions are a common thing. We have one of the highest rates of gender violence in the world. But the phenomena of the active shooter is not something that really happens in our space. We have had 1 or 2 incidents like that, but I'm curious to know what is happening in the society that's kind of triggering these kind of attacks, and what takes people to that edge. Because at the end of the day, this is not a security issue. This is a societal issue. Right. Something's happening within American society that I believe requires some self-examination and some understanding. And it can't be glossed over with superficial discussions about gun control and things like that.
Which is what they always jump to. I mean, it's always jumping to the gun control thing, and there's too many guns. Well, you know what? The only people that are going to abide by the laws are the law-abiding citizens. The criminals are never going to abide by the laws. They're never going to succumb to background checks. They're going to go get the guns on the black market. But I think you're right, and it's interesting because you being not American, you can give us a different perspective as somebody who's in the security industry from another country that is looking in at us. And so I think this is really fascinating, because you're right. It is a societal problem. It's something that, compounded by, of course, the lockdowns and COVID and the stresses of financial issues and the stresses of, the emotional and the mental and, all of the things that are affecting everybody around the world. But yes, there's something larger here. And I can't put my finger on it, but I know a lot of it has to do with the mental state of a lot of these people.
And I think, you know, if you're going to start with that, then you need to forget about black belts and forget about guns and forget about alarm systems and start talking about families, because somebody in that family, something went wrong, you know, in my opinion. And you guys have got a similar phenomena to us. We have huge amounts of young men that grew up fatherless, high divorce rates, and you're looking at young men that never had a positive role model in terms of how do I resolve conflict, perhaps, and this is a worldwide phenomenon, you know, which I think is part of it, but really and truly. It's a funny thing to be talking safety and security, and actually what we should be talking is I think it starts with family, you know, and I'm hazarding a guess here. I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of people that have done a lot of violent things. You know, we've caught criminals over the years, and I've chatted to these guys and. Where's your mom? Where's your dad? Where do you come from? I've not had an opportunity to talk to a person that's been involved with an incident like this. But what I have noticed is that a lot of these guys come from broken homes. And the other thing that I see is that they have very, very little value on their personal lives. And you know, how am I going to deal with that? I'm going to go out and have to deal with a person that he's certainly not going to value my life, because he's not even going to value his own life. And so many of these guys end up taking their own lives. So that kind of tells you something about where they are, you know. And I think as the first responder, you've got to orientate yourself towards. I'm now dealing with a person that is not even going to take care of himself. So I've therefore
what can you even
do
to somebody or say to somebody like that, right? Because they don't care. It's like
exactly.
threatening them with jail or threatening them with harm or something. They don't care.
It's a meaningless thing, which comes, and unfortunately that does come back to the discussion on gun control. I mean, there was that story not so long ago about the guy in the church in Texas. Mm-hmm. Which was, in my view, a very positive discussion about firearms, actually, because it proved that what can you do? Well, that guy knew what to do, you know, and he was prepared adequately, and he was the hero of the day. Right. We've got over 1 million illegal firearms, they estimate, circulating out there. You know, there's not enough roadblocks and police raids and firearm amnesties where you can hand in your illegal firearm. There's not enough in 10 years that's going to make even a scratch on that. But to go along with that, there's just as many people that have come from broken homes, people that have come from and I so related to your discussion in the beginning about the illegal immigrants, because we have a massive problem with that in this country as well. And I'm not saying all of those people are bad. There's some really good people that are they're coming from a much worse circumstance to what they perceive as potentially a better circumstance.
Sure.
But with that, there's a bad element, and there's an untraceable element as well. There's an element that brings a new criminal culture that is different to our criminal culture. There's new learnings, there's new methods, there's new modus operandi that comes with that group as well. And any of us that are dealing with law enforcement or security, we need to learn to start to adapt and say, what I've been doing, if I'm a paramedic for the last 10 years, or I'm a firefighter, or I'm a beat cop, the stuff that I've been doing has to change, because the threat is changing. You know, I'm now dealing with a person that's gotten to a point where it should go so against the human grain. It goes against the grain as a mammal to take the life of an offspring, of a child. You know, like
yeah, absolutely. It does. It runs counter to everything that we we cherish and and we want, life to go on and the population to go on. And we want our children to grow up and be successful and more successful than we are. And to have someone not even think about that, or worse yet, think about it and not care before pulling that trigger, just that's why to me, a lot of it comes back to mental illness, and they're just not right in the head. Now, what caused that? I absolutely agree with you, Jason, that you've got problems in the family structure. 50 years ago, it was the dad went to work, the mom stayed home and raised the kids. And when the father came home, he was done with work, and they spent, the evening together, maybe, listen to radio, watch TV, go out, play, whatever. But it's not like that anymore. There are tons of broken homes. The number of broken homes and in the minority population is that much worse, which is why I think, again, there's a lot more violence in certain segments of the population. And there are really no solutions that anybody is willing to talk about, because the solutions that are potentially viable are considered toxic in a political sense, right? Like look at what they've done to churches over COVID, right? They've shut down all the churches. Well, the United States was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, right? Our ancestors, they fled England because for religious persecution. They came to this country for that reason primarily, right? It was the taxation without representation, and it was religious freedom. And so when we haven't had now people being able to go to church, they haven't been able to worship, they've been demonized. There was just a pastor in Canada, not even the United States, in Canada a couple of weeks ago, that they threw him in jail because he held a mass for his congregation, because people were asking him, look, we want to come, we want to be together, we want to worship, we want to pray together, we want to support each other. This is a really good support system. But unfortunately, between the scandals in the Catholic Church, right, with all the problems with the priests and abuse of children, I think a lot of people, and myself included, because I was raised a Catholic, have lost a measure of faith in that institution, because when they're sweeping it under the rug, literally taking a priest from a problem area and just saying, okay, everybody shut up, we're going to take him, we're going to go put him somewhere else where they don't know who he is. And they mask the problem. All of these things, I think they compound, right? You have a lot of things, and then you throw COVID on top of everything else. And all the financial stresses, like, 13 weeks to stop the spread. Well, hello, that was a year ago plus. Yeah. Okay. And here we still are dealing with it. And so I don't know. It's just, we had to address that tragedy. This is something that, we could probably take the rest of the show and talk about, because our hearts and prayers, they hurt for these people, right? I mean, my heart hurts for these families with these kids, how old, I don't know how old they are, right? But 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15, 20, doesn't matter, right? My kid's going to be my kids when I'm 80 and they're, 50, right?
Yeah. That's the plan. Yeah. I'm sure there's to me, there's no greater conceivable hell than a parent losing their child.
Agreed. It goes against the natural order.
Yeah. I get it. I think on that level, and it is a COVID discussion as well, and that's really this more. It doesn't just speak to. I was chatting about first responders and whatnot earlier, but just to everybody out there, is that we've all got to find new mechanisms. You got that comfort, say, going to mass or going to synagogue or whatever it is you went to, and you can't do that. How am I going to change, and how am I going to adapt so I can still complete those pieces of my life, and stay a stable person in the midst of a lot of job loss and
stress,
and then just to add, there's an element of vicarious trauma as well. Just by watching, I'm so far removed from you, and when you said to me 7 kids, I just took a moment, because I'm affected by that, and I'm on another part of. I'm sitting across the globe. So to any person sitting in the States watching that, who's so much closer, on top of that, you've got a business that's failing. our business serves a lot of people in the hospitality industry. We do security for hotels, restaurants, that kind of thing. I mean, those people have just been absolutely hammered, and they often have large staff bases and often very, very caring people. So they love their staff. And it's been devastating to have to let people go and to watch businesses that have been built for years and years crumble around them. Then on top of that, you've got opportunists, you've got crime. And then on top of that, on one more layer, we've got this extraordinary random or seemingly random act of violence. And I'm not sure how random it is. If you read Gavin de Becker's book, The Gift of Fear, he talks about the fact that there's little warning signs along the way, and I wonder what people around that person were perhaps seeing. Had he slowly become
yesterday that I guess somebody in his family had seen him recently, like, quote, playing with a gun. Well, what does that mean? Like, if you have firearms, I deal with firearms, you deal with firearms. We don't play with our guns. We clean them, we take care of them, we secure them. That's about it, and use them, God forbid, if we ever have to, and practice with them. But we don't play with them, So
I think
warning signs, like you said.
Bad word. I mean, unless it's just a bad word, and what they're referring to is handling a firearm. But that's not handling a firearm is not a predicator of violence, But previous suicidal thoughts or people becoming a little bit, they will start to withdraw from the families a little bit because, there are those signs that do start to take place, and people start. Perhaps there's a substance abuse issue. Perhaps it's websites that person's reading. There are, and this does come down to situational awareness, actually, because am I observing what's happening to the people around me, what's happening to my family, what's happening to my work colleague? This was a happy, jolly guy. He's become subdued. He's become morose. He's become terribly fatalistic. And I start to, I don't believe that guy woke up one day, poured himself a bowl of cornflakes and decided, I'm going to a shopping center to do what he did. I just don't believe that. And I think if we're going to talk about what could be done about it, that it starts there. It starts with, and I have that discussion with my officers. We've got a phenomenon in South Africa. I don't know whether this happens in the States, where we've had a lot of police suicides. Yes, that happens worldwide, but they take out their family as well. So sort of familiar side. The point is that, and that's actually happened to me with one of my officers, actually, which was an utterly devastating. I'm sure it didn't do anything good for my PTSD. It's an utterly devastating thing to have to deal with on a direct basis. But here's the question: as that guy's manager, as his wife, as his friend, as his colleague, as his brother, were there not perhaps signs and interventions that needed to take place in that space? And that is where I think, and I talk to my officers about that, and I say, okay, you finished your shift, you're coming back to the office, you're handing over to day shift. Look at that guy. How's he looking today? Is he looking a little bit different? Did he have a fight with his wife last night? And he's saying he just can't cope. Has he got massive financial burdens that he feels he's just not getting over, and he doesn't see a way out of? Because at some point that person's going to go into an emotional state where they simply feel there is no mechanism for them to get their way out of that situation. And that situational awareness of the family member, the friend, the pastor, the uncle, the sports coach, the jiu-jitsu rolling buddy, the who.
Oh, it's whoever's around. Absolutely. We have to all be much more aware of what's going on. And that's perfect about what I was going to say, because what something like this does is it should wake us all up. And it should say, okay, it should allow us to sort of tailor and focus on, how can I take what happened and make me better at noticing things, right? Making me a little bit more hyper aware of our surroundings, of the people, the places, the objects around us, right? And it also, I think, it's really important that we ask ourselves those what if questions too, right? Well, what if that person's having a bad day today? What would I do if they were all of a sudden, going to snap, or, if there was a problem? Because I bet none of the people that were killed in that grocery store yesterday thought about, boy, I hope nobody comes in and starts shooting me when I'm going shopping today for food.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody thinks about that. Now, most people don't. Some people do. I do. You do. Probably some other people do. Right. Because we've been trained to say, well, you know what? I'm in a public space. I'm out of my element. Yes, I've been to the store 100 times in the last 10 years, but still today could be the day. Right. But when we get into these routines and our comfort zones they become habitual, our guard drops, and we have to not let that guard drop. And so it's really weird what I'm about to tell you guys that are listening, but I mentioned this to Jason before the show, but last night I was teaching my regular martial arts classes, and I'm driving home, and my wife called me to say, hey, I'm at the store. I'm getting ready to check out. It's late. It's dark. Can you swing by the store and just, walk me out to the car with the groceries, help me pack the car, and then, we'll go home and unpack them. I said, yeah, absolutely. And this was before we even knew this had happened. In fact, it was before this tragedy happened yesterday. And so I did that, and of course I did that because I wasn't going to say, no, honey, I'm not too busy to ensure your safety. She's concerned because it's late and there's not a lot of people around. And that's what you do, because you can never be too safe. And you are not being paranoid by waiting and wanting to feel safer and more secure in today's uncertain and, sometimes violent and chaotic world that we live in. And, and I said in my opening, it can get worse. It's probably going to get worse, especially when you have unchecked people flooding into a country, when you have the focus on the wrong things, because the focus shouldn't be on how do we keep the guns away from people. It should be, how do we address the problems that are causing the people that are going to cause violence no matter what, whether it's a gun or a knife or they drive a car into a crowd, because we've seen that happen before. It happened in England a couple of years ago, and it happens it happens, unfortunately. People are going to do what they need to get the demon out of them. And we don't know what causes that, because every single person is different. It could just be that one day that one person says the wrong thing to them and they snap. And they decide that, what, that's it. Today's the day. And I don't even care. And when I'm done doing what I want to do, I'm going to bite a bullet myself, and you guys can clean up the mess without me, because I don't care. We don't know what goes through people's minds. And so it's a freaky thing, but the awareness part of it, Jason, you and I, we can't stress that enough to people, is to pay attention. Don't be distracted. We all get distracted by so many things in our lives, but we've got to pay attention to things, and especially the little things. Like you said, subtle changes in behavior. Somebody you see all the time, all of a sudden they're acting a little different. Why? Hey, is everything all right there, bud? What's going on? Ask, be concerned. That could be the one thing that de-escalates it that day for that person.
Exactly. Maybe all that guy needs is a bit of care, actually, and humanity. But I mean, here's the thing, and it comes down to your wife, going to the checkout, is that people get on with their lives, and you try and do good, and you have relationships with people, and there's one assumption that people need to overcome. So I'm going to the checkout, and I'm going to go get my groceries, and I'm assuming nothing's going to happen to me. But the terrible part of that assumption is that life is fair, and that good things therefore happen to good people. And the truth is that what you watch on the TV, well, good things don't always happen to good people. And somewhere in our makeup, we were taught this. I was certainly taught that by my parents. No, I remember having squabbles with my brother. That's not fair. This is not fair. And actually, the truth is, and it must be I think it's a difficult thing to break to your children, that life is not fair and that actually bad things happen to good people. And I could go to the checkout today and something bad could happen to me. But the only difference is I just don't want that to infringe on my quality of life. Right. So therefore, I'm going to start to build a catalog of things that will enable me to continue living the life I'm living, while at the back of my head, I've got that assumption bad things can happen to good people. Psychologists call it the just world hypothesis. Mm-hmm. And they say, and it's one of the most difficult things for trauma survivors to get their heads around, is that but this is not fair what happened to me. I went to the checkout, the next minute there was a gun in my face. I didn't deserve this. Yes, I agree, you didn't deserve it. But somewhere out there today in South Africa, in the United States, somewhere in the UK, something bad, somebody's going to be in a car accident, somebody's going to get robbed, somebody's going to have a home invasion, somebody's going to wake up to find their TV missing. And there's that acclimatization that, there's this other horrid reality that we try and keep out of our lives. Sometimes with a veneer of denial, perhaps, because we don't want to cope. And so somebody would have said to you, like, Pete, what are you talking about? Your wife's paranoid. Why, there's so many better things you could have done. Why, why go and do that? But the difference is that you're not. That's not part of your mentality. And by doing what you did, you get a degree of comfort. You got to spend a little bit more time with your significant other. And I would rather reframe it like that than saying, I'm paranoid, Right.
Because you're not. People aren't, you can be paranoid where every second of every day you're thinking, oh my God, something's happening, somebody's out to get me, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not that at all. It's being aware and being prepared and asking yourself, like I said a little bit ago, those what if questions. Well, what if something happened to me when I'm out to dinner tomorrow? What if, somebody comes into the store when I'm there? What if somebody broke into my house tonight? You should ask yourself those questions before you need the answers, because when you need the answers, if you never thought about them, you're screwed because you don't know the answer. But at least if you've at least thought about it ahead of time, you've got some sort of answer that you can recall much more quickly, and I'm sure you do this sort of training with your guys. You know how you're going to react because you've thought about it before. The problem comes in when you've never thought about it. There are situations with professional police officers in law enforcement, military, where they're faced with a situation that they've never been faced with and they've never thought of. And so now they don't know how to react. Like, oh my God, what's the right thing to do? Well, the right thing should be that you need to react and end the threat because your partner's life is in danger. But if you never thought about that, you might be hesitant to pull the trigger until it's too late and the person's dead or killed or maimed or whatever it happens to be. So that's a big part of it. So I want to shift gears a little bit because I know we could talk about that part of this all night, but I do want to get to some of the things that we discussed earlier before coming on the show. And so I would just want to first, for our audience, let our audience know what initiated you to enter the security industry. What got you involved in it?
Okay, so you mentioned in my intro that I've been in martial arts all my life. I think that started going to a children's party and seeing Game of Death and with Bruce Lee, and it was like mesmerized by this guy. And then my dad was a karate guy, so I was quite lucky because so I had a great role model in that respect. So I grew up into that world as happens, at some point you transition from being a participant in the class to, the guy says, "Oh, why don't you go and take the kids and you can teach them kata number one, or go and teach them the front kick." And then that kind of became teaching, and I started I had a taekwondo school.
Nice.
And that was cool. So I came home one day and I walked into a pretty violent armed robbery, an extremely violent armed robbery. And it was a really horrific event for the other people on the property. But it was a life-changing event for me because it made me question what I was doing and where I was going in life. When you're lying on your stomach and somebody's taken your second-degree black belt and tied your hands behind your back with it, and they're tapping your foot with a machete, you have some time to think.
Wow. Yeah.
So what happened was, first thing, that led me to the world of firearms, because I realized, okay, I was missing a whole aspect of the self-defense world. It wasn't going to be resolved with a great flying kick, as much fun as that was. And I started to explore other parts of the martial arts world. And it also so happened that I was a pretty lousy entrepreneur. So, people say to you, "Oh, you're a great instructor." Yeah, but being an instructor, having martial arts school is not the same thing. There's a business aspect to running a martial arts school as well.
Absolutely.
You need to know to market yourself. And I didn't have those tools. And I realized that out of that incident, I wanted to make people safer, and I didn't feel like martial arts was the right mechanism for it. So I enrolled in a class at a college, a security management class, and I started to learn the basics of security. And it so happened that my lecturer was looking for a guy that could work for him. And I started to train bank guards. And then I spent a lot of time working casinos with casino guards. I can tell you, there's nothing good that comes from that world. If you think you're going to go there and change your life and make it better, you're not. There's a reason why casino owners are rich.
Yes.
And like they didn't make that money from losing money. I can promise you that. So I didn't see very good things there. So that was my entry into the corporate security world, and I was quite dissatisfied because this was now about making clients happy and writing reports, and it wasn't right for me. And eventually, through a series of events, I was employed as a tactical officer in a company that dealt with residential security, and a very, very interesting project where they were using private security to do public space policing. So, I read a report yesterday, and it's probably out of date now, that our ratio of security officers to policemen is probably about 5-1 in South Africa. So, and on a worldwide level, we are very, very under-policed in South Africa, and we have an enormous crime problem. We have enormous poverty issues. We have the ultra-rich living right on the doorstep of the ultra-poor. That doesn't make for a good a mix of things. It makes for angry, disenfranchised people. It makes for, and we have the whole history of apartheid, which we haven't shared that. And so I started to work in this business where we were patrolling the streets just like a beat cop would. And I was really lucky because the guys I was working with were mostly retired soldiers. So we're talking about guys that had fought in places like Sierra Leone, Central African Republic, Iraq, like some of the ugliest wars on the continent. And they were coming to the end of their careers, hitting their 50s at that point, and were willing to impart knowledge. So I got to work and learn from these utterly fantastic people.
That's awesome.
And then later on become their managers. And 10 years later, I became the MD of that company.
So that's a really interesting point because, we're talking about the safety and security that people have at home, right? And or whether you're at the supermarket, wherever you are. So that was one of the things that I wanted to get your take on, which is, you have the safety of the individual, right? Your personal safety, your personal security, which, as you just said, martial arts may not cut it all the time when you're staring down a barrel of a gun. I don't care how good you are, you're not catching a bullet. You're not going to be faster than that, right?
Yeah.
So explain to us, or give me your take for our listeners, what do you feel like the relationship then is between, say, the individual, right, where you're at home and you have your own sort of way of protecting yourself, but then you've also got, as you were talking about, you were policing a community, right? So then you have this relationship that you've got to have some sort of symbiotic, complementary relationship between your individual safety and security and the safety and security of the environment and the community in which you live.
Yeah, I suppose I'm lucky. My wife is an ecologist, and we have discussions about what she does quite often. And I've started to really view security as an ecosystem. So if I'm the insect, it's not about me just living in my little hole and feeding my little grubs. Right. I've got to go out there into that world, and I've got to interact with things that might eat me, people that might stand on me, and whatever the case is. And that's the truth. As we can expand that metaphor out, we live in an ecosystem, and we can choose to either be a victim to that ecosystem, or we can choose to either take control of it, or perhaps you can't take control of it. I can choose to be an influencer in that ecosystem. And what was phenomenal about that particular initiative, and they had some really serious issues. They had suburbs which were having, say, 20 contact crimes a month. A contact crime is a crime where, for people that don't know, it's a crime where a criminal is coming into physical contact with the victim. So somebody's being held at gunpoint, or whatever the case may be. And it was the community coming together and saying, we've had enough. We're going to club our resources together, and we're going to acknowledge that crime doesn't start in a home. A crime starts outside the home, and it graduates into the home. So perhaps if we intercept the crime there, we don't have to live through the terror, because it's all very well.
I love that. That's good.
It's all very well and good saying, "Oh, we chased the bad guy, we caught him, we arrested him," and fantastic. But in the meantime, a family was put through some type of terror, and it might not have been it might have just been that you woke up and your TV was gone, but you're still going to experience some sense of personal violation, that somebody came into your safe, your sanctuary, and violated that sanctuary. And so if we're going to stop that, the idea was that needs to take place within the public space. And so that particular community said, okay, we're gonna contract, we're gonna create an initiative where we're gonna have different parties involved, and we're gonna contract people to try and do that public space work. Okay, all very, very well and good. What if you're in a community that doesn't have the money for that? Well, that doesn't mean you can't do the same thing. There are neighborhood watches that you can get involved with. In South Africa, in our townships, where people are basically living in tin shacks. Maybe they're earning $2,500 Rand a month, which in dollar terms you can divide that by 15 maybe or so.
Oh, wow.
Our currency is not very strong. But in spite of that, even those people are able, they're put together committees. They don't have cars. So you'll get a group of 10 guys walking the street, and making sure that their little section of that community is safe, because they've understood that if they can make that public space safe, that is where deterrence actually starts to take place. It doesn't take place with my dog or my wall or my alarm. It takes place outside. And I can't control what happens outside, but I can certainly influence it. And how do I influence it? I get involved with my community, and I get to know my neighbor, and I get to know his sounds, because I know that Joe comes home at a certain time, and his front door sounds like that. And sometimes he'll have an argument with his wife. But tonight, I heard something that didn't sound like Joe shouting. I heard a voice I'd never heard of before, or something sounds different. I start to interact with my community. And by the way,
that's so important, because you have all these people that you live around, and hopefully you get along with them. We can't, unfortunately, we can't pick our neighbors, right? I'm lucky. Yeah. I'm lucky. I have a fantastic. I'm lucky because I have a fantastic group of neighbors that live nearby, right. And we hang out constantly, all the time. And we've had discussions like this, like, okay, we look out for each other. If a car goes down the street slowly, all of a sudden there's a group text. Hey, you see that car that went by? Did you ever see that car before? Like, we look out for each other. There's security cameras on my house and a couple of my other neighbors' houses. We watch out for each other, and that's so important because it makes everybody feel a little bit more safe, right? But it doesn't give you the luxury of being complacent. It just knows that, hey, you know what? He's got my back. She's got my back. If there's a problem, I know that people are there to help me. Now,
that's it.
In South Africa, you had mentioned to me that home invasions are a prevalent threat, and you're just talking about, crime is, there's a lot of poor people there. So I think a lot of people in the United States, and as well as other parts of the world for that matter, are also concerned that, their home can be invaded, right? Somebody comes in, the desperate times, people get desperate, where they say anarchy is only, 9 meals away, right? I mean, if you're hungry and you're thirsty and you don't have any money, you're going to do whatever you got to do to put food in your kids' mouths, and people are going to do things that they may normally not do. Now, that's one side of it, but then you've also got the criminal element. So what have you learned from your dealings with people in your career, and how to sort of mitigate that? Is it forming things like watch groups? Is it some other things? What could you share with us there?
Yeah. So look, I think again, people shouldn't make the assumption that the guy that's going to come into your house while you've got your feet up on the counter watching Netflix is a desperate and starving person. In my experience, a lot of home invasions are so definitely. I've experienced people that'll say come in 2 o'clock in the morning, steal your bicycle out of your garage. There's a difference between that kind of person and a person who's made a conscious decision. I'm going to take a weapon. I'm going to go into a house. This is a different kind of human being, and he's crossed certain mental boundaries that the cat burglar has not crossed, and that guy perhaps doesn't want. So that's the first thing to acknowledge, is that we're dealing with a different kind of beast. The second thing is that crime, again, it starts from the public space in one of two ways. Either that guy's going to have done some kind of reconnaissance. He's driven past earlier in the day, and he's thought, that's the house. They've got a side door there covered by some bushes. No one's going to see me when I slip past there. I can park my van by that tree. So he might have done some kind of reconnaissance and some kind of decision. There might have been, or there can be opportunistic type of home invasion. So a typical South African one that I've dealt with is lady's outside, she's in the yard, she's hanging washing on the line, and 2 guys jump over the wall and they take her inside. Oh, yeah. So that can happen. So again, I'm going to start with the public space, and yes, I do believe in the neighborhood watch model, because if I can disrupt that the guy doing the reconnaissance, and I can, already there's a lady that drove past, a little lady with her curly hair. She drove past, she looked at that van, she wrote down his number plate. You've already done more than an armed police officer can ever do, because I've already put a psychological barrier in that guy's head just by that action. And nobody had to pull a trigger. It was that simple. So that's a good place to start. But let's assume and also with the opportunists, if I can put pressure on the street and I can take that street back. This now, I no longer think of my house as defended space. I start to think of my street as the defended space. And the group text thing can work. By the way, John, there's a strange guy standing outside your letterbox, and 5 of us come outside. He's gonna pretty quickly. Nothing actually had to take place. In fact, I can just have a chat to my neighbors, and this guy's starting to look at, these people are all gonna. I'm already creating that, and now we might want to challenge him as well. But let's assume we weren't able to intercept that person. Criminologists tell us that criminals make a decision based on whether they feel they can get away with. Am I going to be able to execute this correctly? And I'm going to make that decision based on whether there's a detection mechanism, whether there's a deterrent, some mechanism of deterrence, and then something that defends my home. If we take those 3 Ds. So this house, it's got no cameras, it's got no lighting, so there's nothing to detect me entering, and they've done some beautiful landscape gardening, so when they look out their window, they can't even see down their yard. It's lovely. Mm-hmm. So I've got places to hop to. Okay, so they're not going to detect me, and they don't have a dog, and this community doesn't seem really switched on, so I'm not deterred by it. Now I've got physical barriers that I'm going to deal with, and worldwide, I've looked at stats from South Africa, Australia, the UK, and the States. The number one form of entry is through a doorway. And so we now need to start to look at some kind of at physically hardening those entry spaces, and not making the mistake of thinking it's going to be the front door. You know, if I'm going to have a 9 out of 10 front door, I need a 9 out of 10 back door as well, and I need a 9 out of 10 patio door. So we start to do some physical hardening, because a lot of the trauma that comes out of a home invasion is, I just didn't see it coming. You know, I was sitting there, I was watching whatever, and suddenly this guy appeared in the doorway, and there's that utter shock and that state of disbelief. And because I hadn't gone back to Pete's advice and played the what if game last week, what if somebody forces this door open? What if a guy comes down this garden path? And I didn't have a plan. You know, they say it's better to pre-live rather than relive. So
that's good.
I don't have a burglary plan. What happens if I'm dealing with an armed home invasion? How's my family going to react? What happens if I'm in a hurricane zone and we're going to have to evacuate? How am I going to evacuate? Or, you know, I just look at what I see in the States: tornadoes and hurricanes, right? And
wildfires.
Or the wildfires on the West Coast, and I'm going to have to. And by the way, we have every winter, because I live in a rural place, we have wildfires too. Mm. And it's amazing between the neighbors that burn fire breaks. And they've got a water tender, they've got some fire beaters, they've got all that stuff packed away and ready for the winter season. And then there's the guy who he doesn't give a damn. Well, that's the same guy that's gonna say, why does crime happen to me? I didn't deserve it. Suddenly this guy was in my room, and the country's going to hell. You know, no.
Victims all say the same thing too, right? I mean, they all say, you know, I never thought it would happen to me. Yeah, and it's true of just about any crime to anybody ever, right? I mean, it's like, I can't believe my house was robbed. I can't believe I was beaten. I can't believe I was whatever. I never thought it would happen to me. Well, and what I tell people is, look, I'm here to tell you that not only can it happen to you, you have to have the mentality that it will happen to you. Because when you make that little switch from it could happen to it will happen, that's a huge difference in your mind and how you think about things. And I tell people that all the time. You've got to think about it that way. Even if it never happens, who cares? You have to make decisions based on, it as almost an inevitability, right? Because that's going to force you to think differently.
Yeah. Louis Pasteur said, "Fortune favors the prepared." And that's the truth, So now I have really uncomfortable discussions with people, and they're horrified by the things I say. I say to them, have you ever had a discussion with your kids that a crime could happen in your home? You're like, you're affecting my child's childhood. You're traumatizing him. How can I have this discussion? No. Actually, I've had those discussions with my kids. When I bought my first firearm, we sat down around the dinner table, and I put the firearm on the table, and I didn't hide this thing away. Yeah, I said, look, here's this thing. It can see how easy it was to pull the trigger. That's how easy it is to take. And we started to have a discussion, so they knew about what firearms were about. And
it's very important to educate them, because then they're not afraid, and they're not uneducated, right? They're afraid because people are afraid of things they don't understand. That's kind of what I was trying to say, right?
Or maybe they're not afraid. Maybe they're curious, and they're just waiting for that time that you turn your back and I really want to touch this thing, and Dad won't let me, so let me touch it. Right. And there are horrible stories that come out of that. So the same thing goes for crime. Have you had that discussion that something bad could happen, and what mechanisms have you put into place? Because an ex-partner of mine, a very good friend, he was in a situation where he was it was I think 7 or 8 in the evening. He had gone to buy some flowers in a supermarket, and because he's a really sus guy and he's worked the security world a long time, he looked around and he just saw the signs, and he realized, oh, there's that guy, and he saw it was coming. They were going to rob the store. And it so happened that there were like 6 or 8 guys. So you're not going to take these guys on. So he immediately took his firearm and he hid it under a counter, because a firearm is something the criminals want. And he went down and he felt the guy frisk him and take his cell phone and whatnot. And just to the side of him, there was a woman with 2 kids, and they were standing up, and they were jittery, and it was making the bad guy really jittery, right? Because she couldn't control her 2 kids. And Mom, why is that guy holding a gun? Why does he look so angry? Why? And so you're escalating the situation. And imagine if she had a word that she could say that she'd already said to the kids, if ever I say this word, all I want you to do is sit down, and I'm going to put my arms around you, and we're going to keep quiet. How much better that situation would have been for her, and how it would have de-escalated that situation in terms of the guy. The home invader is also nervous. He's nervous of the fact maybe he's misjudged it, and he's walked into the house, and that guy is the chairman of the NRA. Maybe the neighbor's going to spot him. Maybe he's going to get arrested. Maybe he's going to get killed. Maybe he's going to get maimed by the dog. I don't know what's going to happen to him. So he's nervous. His fight or flight system is already triggered. And his ability to make human decisions is diminished. That neocortex, that part of the brain that helps us make very human decisions, is at that time perhaps not operating. The amygdala is maybe running the show, and all he needs is a jumpy child and a guy, and his fingers are already on the trigger, and the startle flinch response is,
yeah,
and things might not. So, what mechanisms have I got to start to control this person? I can't. He's already pointing the gun at me. I'm not going to be able to get my firearm out. I'm not going to be able to do my best ninjutsu move because my kids are with me, and I've got a realistic understanding of things. So how am I going to control this guy? Well, maybe I need to put him in a safe space and make him feel that he's not threatened, and start to facilitate this thing. So number one, violence is less of an option, and I can get him out of my space as quickly as possible. Okay, What do you want? And so I start to ask him questions. what can I do for you? No, I want the safe. Okay, well, come with me. Don't worry, the family, and we start to work on that basis.
Well, that's good advice, because people, there are small yet potentially huge things that they can do, especially where it comes to children, or especially when it comes to situations that are dicey, to say the least, right? Where there's a high degree of stress, where, as you're saying there, Jason, these people that are criminals, they already have that heightened fear that potentially things can go wrong, and they don't want things to go wrong. So they don't want to get caught. And so they're going to, do anything they can to not be caught. And God help you if you're in their way, because they're going to make sure that you are not in their way, if at all possible, if you stand between them, going to jail or being free. And so that I really like that advice, because there are small things that we can do to educate our children and our families and our spouses, coworkers, friends, neighbors, everybody in our space, in our immediate sort of, cluster of people that we deal with on a regular basis, to make it so that we can all become safer through those different ways of, thinking about what could happen. And if something does bad happen, how can we reduce the impact on us? How can we get out of that situation safely? And you know what? Things can be replaced. People cannot. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that, okay, give them your wallet, give them your Rolex, give them your car key, whatever, man. Don't worry about it. As long as you, your wife, your spouse, your kids, you all get to go home safely, okay, you can do that. You can be alive, and you can not be a victim, because we don't want anybody to be a victim. And unfortunately, sometimes, as we started the show off talking about the victims at the shooting at the supermarket, sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there really is nothing you can do about it. Those kids, there was nothing those kids could have done. Somebody walks in and just starts shooting them. I mean, who could really do anything about that? So there are, unfortunately, going to be things and times where there really isn't anything we can do. But that doesn't mean you have to go about the rest of your life thinking, well, I have no control over it. It's just going to be a random thing that's going to happen to me. Well, so could a meteor come down and come right through my house right now and crush me where I sit right now. Am I going to worry about it? No. I mean, there's things that just, if they're going to happen, they're going to happen. You can't do anything about it.
Millions of people living on the San Andreas Fault right now.
Right. Right. There's a lot of things that are risky, but we weigh the risk versus, living, right? We don't all live in a shell. We don't all stay cooped up in our homes and are more afraid about anything, right? I mean, your chance of dying in a car accident tomorrow, when you're driving your car, you got a greater chance of dying from that than from COVID. But yet everybody's freaked out about COVID. I'm not. You know what? If I get it, I get it. Chances are I'm not going to be dead, because it's less than 0.5% of people are going to die. And if you're younger and you're healthier and you don't have conditions, you know what I mean? So there's things that we have to weigh those risk factors. And unfortunately, we are getting to the end of our show here, and we could talk for a while. I could tell, Jay, right? But just a couple quick things. Where would you suggest somebody go to begin if they say, okay, where's the best place for somebody to go to start if they want to really understand which risks are relevant to them in their lives? I mean, apart from really kind of looking where they are and where they go every day.
Such a difficult thing, because, and I see you've done work in the cyberspace, so you'll be acutely aware of this. There's so much information out there that isn't real. So if I'm going to start understanding risk in my life, I need to go and find some really good information sources about where I live from that aren't full of garbled opinion and myth. So so I would, that's also part of our ecosystem, is the virtual part of our world. And so go and find some reliable sources of information. What is the risk in my neighborhood? And find a good reliable. So it might be at your local police station. It might be somebody from your trauma ward. It might be, but find a good source of information to start to understand what are the real risks in our life. I know that we've got one of the highest murder rates in the world in South Africa, but I also know that 18,000 people will die on cars on South African roads this year, and there's a much higher risk of me being killed in a car accident than me being killed in a carjacking. You know, there's 1% of carjackings are fatal in South Africa. That's not the same for vehicle accidents. So I start to create a body of knowledge that shows me what the risk is. And I find good, reliable sources, well-researched documents. There's some great books out there. We're sitting on a great podcast where you can get some amazing. I was amazed. I listened to the CIA guy that you interviewed, and it was like, oh, there's a new thing for me. I've been 20 years in the business, and I've learned something new that I got some take homes from that interview. There are great sources of information out there that I can start to build a body of knowledge of what risks are relevant to me. And then I start to say, well, in terms of the resources that I've got in my life, what can I do to start mitigating those risks? Maybe I can't afford a firearm. I can't afford to go to the local jiu-jitsu school, but maybe I can start to do a 1 mile jog every day. And that makes me a little bit physical fitter. The road doesn't cost me a cent. And so I start to get myself a little bit fitter. And I know that's going to give me better cardiovascular strength. Well, there's a nice COVID intervention for me. And I start to take those risks, and I want to address the ones which are most real and with the resources that I've got. And once I've addressed it with those resources, then I need to take a step back and say, I've done it. And okay. Now I'm not only noticing. I've picked up my situational awareness. I'm not only noticing strange people in the neighborhood. I've also noticed the beautiful flower bed, because my situational awareness is that much better. And I've listened to the chances. I've listened to the kids giggling in the next room because my situational awareness is better. And it starts to, the security work I've done has started to enhance the rest of the work in my life as well. That's
a great way to put it, because it does. And that's what it should do, right? I mean, what we do should improve our life in every way possible. And the little things, we absolutely have to step back and appreciate the results that we achieve for ourselves when we do achieve something, right? Whether it's, achieving a physical goal, or losing weight, or obtaining something, or whatever it happens to be, right? I want to reward, winning some award at work, whatever it is. These things are milestones. They might be little ones, they might be big ones, but take a minute to recognize it, but then don't sit on your laurels, right? Say, okay, what can I do next? What can I do to improve it, make my situation better? What else, how can I improve to make my life better and the lives of those around me better and safer and more secure? And at the end of the day, if you don't have safety and security, what do you have, right? I mean, you need to be safe and you need to be healthy. Okay.
Exactly.
Everything else is sort of is secondary, really. You could have all the money in the world, but if you don't have your health, and money can't buy your health, what good is it, right? If it can't buy your safety, what good is it? So it's very important that we put things in perspective, because there are always people that are in worse off situations than we are. And it doesn't matter if, I'm sitting here in Pennsylvania, United States, Jason's sitting there in Johannesburg, South Africa. We're essentially half a world apart, but yet we both have the same sort of drive and desire to improve the safety and security of this entire planet, and do that, as you say, one life at a time. As I say, same thing, one person at a time. If you just change one person and you make them a better person, then I can go to sleep at night knowing that I've done that. And that's one reason I love training people, because you see that change, especially in kids, so.
Absolutely.
We before I wrap up, because I knew we were going to crank through and be talking. I'm going to pull up for those of you that are watching this on YouTube. I'm going to pull this up now. If you are not and you're just simply listening to the podcast, I want you to take a look. Oh, what did I do here?
It looks good from my side.
I did something. Oh, I am sharing it. Okay, you see your
screen
you
are.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
So this is Jason's website, Security Advisor. That's viser.net. And it is a blog, and he has all kinds of great information here. He talks about, we talked about initially about martial arts, some information about him, some situational awareness guides. Okay. So if you guys are looking for more information, check out some of his situational guides. He's got 5 situational awareness exercises. Okay. Fantastic. Survival mindset. I'm a big proponent of that. The warrior mindset is something I talk about all the time. Got stuff on YouTube about that. So take some time, go through this, and you will definitely learn something. But do something to improve your life, the lives of those around you, because we all live on this planet. We all want to be safe. We all want to be secure. We all want to enjoy life, and we want to do that in as stress-free an existence as possible. Unfortunately, we can't get rid of stress, but we can manage that. And part of managing that stress is reducing to as low a level as possible the risks that you face in your life. Okay, whether they're health risks, safety risks, security risks, financial risks, whatever those risks are. When you reduce those risks, you reduce those stress levels, you can think more clearly, and you end up being a happier person for it. And this life it should be enjoyed, right? I mean, you don't want to be miserable. Exactly. I mean, what good is that, right? So I'll be sure to put Jason's links at the in here. As I said, his blog, his chat is securityadvisor.net. You can find him on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram by looking up the Security Advisor, or his name, Jason Mordecai, Mordecai. That's it. So really appreciate you being here. You have any last thoughts, any last pearls of wisdom for our listeners before I let you go here?
Yeah, well, Peter, I like what you said. There's that Japanese concept of Kaizen, just continuous improvement. Just take one. I know big things are happening in the world. We've got COVID. We've got massacres. More are going to happen. More armed robberies are going to happen. More car accidents are going to happen. But also more laughter is going to happen. More times with the family is going to happen. And just take what small thing could I do today that's going to help facilitate that life?
Excellent. That's it. One step at a time. So really, thank you so much, Jason, for being here. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in again to Safety Talk. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, get the latest safety information, get all your past episodes. Jason was alluding to one where I interviewed a gentleman from the CIA. We try to provide you with as much information as possible to keep you safe and secure, both in the digital world and in the physical world. So watch that anytime. And until next time, as always, please stay safe.